Hi, welcome everybody. We're going to talk today a little bit about financial peace, and I'm going to start out by saying that most of this content that I'm going to be talking about today came from Dave Ramsey's site. He discusses the baby steps in his plan to financial freedom. So I'm going to just review that. None of this is my content. It is all Dave Ramsey's content. I did add a few things to it to give you a little bit better spin and describe it a little bit better. But we're going to start out by just talking about the first 3 baby steps. There's actually 7, so let's go ahead and display those now. So the 7 baby steps are, step 1 is to save $1,000, and they call that an emergency fund. We'll discuss more about what level that is, but so step 1 is just saving $1,000 in a bank or in your sock drawer or somewhere. Step 2, you're going to pay off all your debt. That's the hard one. Actually, getting started is harder, but step 2, you're going to pay off all your debt, but you're going to use what they call a debt snowball, and we'll talk about that a little bit more. And then step 3 is where you're going to actually save 3 to 6 months of your expenses for emergencies, and I'll discuss that more in a little bit too. So step 3 is where you're going to actually create your emergency fund. So you can think about step 1 as really like a starter emergency fund, just to get you started. You're going to pay off your debts, and then on maybe step 3, you're going to create a real emergency fund, one that can fund things like broken down cars, new transmissions, all those things that $1,000 wouldn't pay for. So let's just dive a little bit deeper into this now. I threw together this little document I called the detailed baby steps. And what it is in those steps, we said step 1 is to save $1,000. Well, you could start saving that $1,000 right now if you wanted to. The problem is there's some things that you should do. Notice I said should. You should do prior to even starting. And the first one is to commit to actually doing it. That is going to be the hardest step, and you'll notice here on the sheet that's the first step before you start the steps. So it's step 0 really. Commit to these baby steps, because part of going into this plan using the baby steps is that you basically are telling yourself, or you're telling each other if you're a couple, that you don't plan on ever borrowing money ever again. That includes credit cards, anything. Now, of course, that with the exception of buying a house, which is a mortgage. And we'll talk more about that in baby step 6 in later episodes. But today we're going to just talk about baby steps 1, 2, and 3. And in this case, a little bit about step 0 that I've added in. Because I believe that you need to do this. You have to commit to following these steps, or you're never, ever going to succeed. You're just going to continue doing what is comfortable and you've been doing your whole life. In my case, when I started these baby steps, I was living paycheck to paycheck. That doesn't work. So I engrossed myself into this plan, learned how to do it, worked the plan, and now I sit and teach or show or mentor or whatever the word you want to be, guide, help other people to do exactly what I've already done. And when I say I mean me and my spouse. We both did it together. You have to do it together. If you don't do this together as a couple, if you are a couple, then you'll never succeed. One can't do this plan while the other's doing whatever they want. It doesn't work that way. Household finances never work that way. You can, however, if you're an individual, can work this plan successfully all by yourself. So it's not that you need a partner to do it. It's that if you already have a partner, you can't succeed if only one partner is doing it, if you understand what I mean. So, and if you don't, throw something in chat there, and or join my Discord server. We have a discussion group in there, and we talk about things like this. We even help to discuss things about how to get your partner on board with this. So let's dive a little bit deeper. So the second one says talk with your spouse and get on the same page. If you're not on the same page, then how are you going to succeed? The next one is you actually have to do a budget. You can't just say, oh, well, I spent this much this month, without actually writing out a budget. And that could be in a spreadsheet, it could be on a piece of paper, it could be anywhere you want it to be. It doesn't have to be something massively formal, but you definitely have to have an expectation of what you're going to spend before the month starts. And then you have to track that budget and keep up with it. And do not break the budget by doing something other than what you had planned. So that's the whole point of the budget. You can't just, okay, well, I'm going to track how much I spent. Well, that's tracking how much you spent. That's your expenses. That's not a budget. A budget involves you doing something prior to you spending and then tracking it after the fact. And the budget should either allow you to spend on an item, or if it's not in the budget, will disallow you from spending on that item, and or it'll make you defer it into another month where you can allow it at that point. So don't think of a budget as something that hinders you. So think of something that a budget as something that enables you, because if you plan it and you put it in the budget, it gives you permission to spend on that. Now, if you're in debt, part of baby step 2, you're going to want to discuss with your spouse during that budget time of whether or not that purchase is warranted or important enough for you to defer your financial freedom. So that's the whole point of getting on the same page with your spouse. It says here to temporarily stop all your retirement contributions. And I know what everybody's thinking. Brian, I'm going to lose way too much money if I do that. Okay, so you might lose 50 to 100 bucks a month. Right, how much you losing now? By being in debt. So you're saving 2 or 3% into your retirement. Oh, I'll never get that back. I'm too old to do that. Okay, well, so how long is it going to take you to be debt free? Are you going to get to retirement and still have debt? And then that 3% you were saving really didn't save anything? Or can you hold off on retirement contributions for a year, 18 months? So anything beyond 18 months, you've got some serious problems with you've got to really, it says up here, to get in gazelle intensity. You have to really, really want to do this. Commit to this program and actually sit down and say, I'm sick and tired of being in debt and paying someone else. So the idea behind stopping your retirement contributions is to get you motivated to pay that debt off so you can go back to making those contributions. It's not about punishing you or you losing out for a few months. So yeah, you might lose out on 50 to 100 bucks a month on retirement contributions, but in the long run, you'll get out of debt sooner. And then when you get to the baby step 4 is what we're talking about, you're going to be putting away 15% of your income. Well, if you can't afford to put away 15 to 20% of your income right now, you're losing out on that. So really, you saying that you can't stop retirement contributions because you're going to lose out on the 3 or 4% you're stopping, you're losing out on the other 12% that you could be putting in there if you were, if you were debt free. So there's an argument either way. And I understand when people say that, but I also know what the ramifications of you not stopping are too. I've seen it, I've done it, and I know in most cases, you not stopping means you will stay in debt and therefore not have enough at retirement anyway. So why not try something that you haven't tried before? That's just an idea. You got to get current on your basics. The 4 walls is what they refer that to, is food, utilities, shelter, and your basic transportation. Those 4 things enable you to get income. Without your income, you can't do anything. You can't live, you can't get out of debt. So you have to be current on those items before you start anything. So you don't want to be putting away the $1,000 for baby step 1 before you're current on your 4 walls. If you can't maintain your 4 walls, you need to increase your income, period. There's nothing around. Or you need to look at what those 4 walls entail. Maybe you're living way above your means and it's just time for you to get a reality check. Who knows? So the idea is to get those 4 walls, your house, basically your shelter, in a solid state. Once that you have those 4 walls in place, at that point you need to look at what else do I have that I do not need. Notice I said need, not want. A lot of us want that real nice new fancy car we just bought, but in reality we can't afford it because we're so far in debt we can't see out of it. So, I got my nice car, but I'm so far in debt that I'll never ever pay for it. Eventually I'll pay for it, but what am I losing out on? So you want to look at, it's mentioned here as toys. So anything that's non-essential, not one of those four walls items, you want to look at what you can use to pay down that debt snowball or the debt for baby step 2 that we're going to talk about here in just a few moments. And then look at the cuts in your lifestyle, like I just said. It may be that you're living well within your means and you're doing exactly what you're supposed to be doing. You're just in debt. Well, if that's the case, we just need to apply create a budget and apply any excess toward that debt and pay it down. And we'll do that in baby step 2. So once you've done that and you've cut everything out, you've sold everything you possibly can, you've got your 4 walls all taken care of, you need to get current on your bills that you have, because we don't want anything going into collections at that point. It's not a good idea as you're trying to get out of debt that you go into collections on something. So you want to try to stay current. And that could be just paying the minimum payments on everything, or calling them up and saying, hey, I can afford to pay this. Is that okay? And if they agree to it, then you're current and you won't be delinquent anymore. All right, so let's go a little bit further into it. Let's dive a little bit into baby step 1. So we said that baby step 1 is to save $1,000 for your starter emergency fund. The goal here is to save that $1,000. What that's going to do for most people is it might be the first time they've ever had that much money set aside for anything. So that $1,000, it's adjustable. So if you're a single person and you think $500 will suffice to get you out of trouble if you had a car accident or something along those lines, where you just have to pay your deductible or something like that. So just enough that you won't go back out of this program just because you had something come at you. We talk about Murphy's Law, and that something could possibly come at you. When we talk about budgeting and finances and Murphy's Law, it's going to happen. You don't know what it is, when it's going to happen, but you know it's going to happen. So the idea here is to set aside this $1,000, and because you know something's going to happen eventually. And at that point, you have to look at it and say, okay, well, that $1,000 isn't going to be enough for a real big emergency, so I got to quickly pay down this debt so I can get to baby step 3 and fully fund this thing. I've got to fully fund my emergency fund in order to be successful in life. So the only way to do that is to pay off your debt first. So the idea of this being a low amount, or $1,000, isn't to say, oh, that's enough to cover an emergency. It's enough to cover most emergencies, but just enough too to make you sweat a little bit to say, I need to pay this debt down as soon as possible so I can fund this thing. So, and at that point too, you're not taking anything out of your credit cards. You can only use real cash at this point. Once you start on baby step 1, there's no such thing as a credit card in your household again, ever again. So, I mean, you can agree to disagree with me, but baby step 1, you're basically chopping up your credit cards. That's the second part of baby step 1. And if you don't have health insurance, you need to get it right away. Even if it's the kind where the government offers it to you. However you qualify and get life insurance, you need to have it. To me, that's part of your 4 walls. That's part of your shelter. That shelters you and or your kids, for that matter. Life insurance. If someone depends on your income for the 4 walls, you have to have life insurance. The exception to that is if you have enough in investments and an emergency fund large enough that they will not need it, then you can say you're self-insured and not need life insurance. But if you can't say that, you need life insurance. So that's number 1.3 there. Especially if you've got children. They are dependent upon you for your income. If something was to happen to you, they need to be taken care of. That's what life insurance is for. It's to cover that. It says here to amputate the cars. So what the idea behind that is, you don't need that huge car payment just to be able to say you have basic transportation. It's not about looking nice in the car. It's about being able to get from point A to point B, and that's from your home to your job. If you can't pay off that car within the next 24 months, you don't need it. Not in this plan. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't start saving up for it after you get done baby step 2 and get a different one or a newer one later. But for right now, if you've got debt for baby step 2 that you can't pay down right away, you're not ready for a bigger car payment. You can also raise, one of the considerations here is you can raise your insurance deductibles, and that'll lower your premiums a little bit, because you can go up to $1,000 now because you have a $1,000 emergency fund. That's the mindset behind that. If you don't have a will, draw one up. Get it done. They're not very expensive. Go out, find a lawyer that does those, and get your will done. Take care of those folks that are dependent upon you for income. One of the other things is it says to consider long-term disability. Some people are at higher risk for strokes and those types of things, but could you imagine if you are the person that brings in the income in the family and you had a stroke and now you can't work? What's going to happen? That $1,000 or even a fully funded emergency fund is not going to help. Long-term disability would. It's going to provide a source of income during those rough times. So it's just things to consider. It doesn't say you have to do it. So baby step 1 again is to save up the $1,000 into a starter emergency fund. We're going to call it the starter emergency fund. Baby step 2 is the debt snowball. That's where you list all of your bills, all of your debt, from the lowest balance to the highest balance. And I'm not talking about your mortgage here. So the idea behind that is that you want to list the smallest one first and work on that first one, so that way you can get it quickly paid off and you can get a success in this plan and this path that you're on. Now, you might say, well, Brian, I've always heard that you have to list your debts based on the interest I'm paying. Well, yeah, that's mathematically correct. But the problem here is it's not math that got you in trouble. It's your behavior. If it was a math problem, you wouldn't be in debt. So mathematically, it makes more sense to list them by interest rates. The problem is it's not going to change your behavior if you do that. If you list them this way, and you list them lowest to highest, what's going to happen is you're going to pay all bare minimums on all of your debt, but on the lowest one, anything left in your budget everything left in your budget is going to go toward baby step 2, or that first item in the snowball, which is the lowest amount. That may be 50, 60, 70, 80 bucks on a credit card or something. Who knows what it could be $1,000, whatever. You're not going to touch that $1,000 that you put in an emergency fund. That's going to sit there. You don't touch that unless there's an emergency. You then put all your additional money from your budget toward this baby step 2, or the lowest debt item. And what's going to happen is you're going to pay that off. And then you're going to take the amount you were paying on that and add it to the second item in your debt snowball, which is the next highest debt listed in that list that you created. And eventually you're going to realize that you paid off the first one, and you get like, I paid off the first one. And then all of a sudden you pay off the second, and then the third, and then the fourth, and then you're like, oh my God, this is working. And it changes your mindset. It changes your behavior. This is a behavior problem, and it's nothing to do with finances at all, other than it's how your behavior is paying them, or not paying them in some cases. So no more new credit, and you start paying off the debt. Now you start dwindling down that debt to a manageable size, and as you pay off the lower debt items, the amount that you were paying on the minimum payment on those is rolling over into the amount of the next debt in the list. That's where they get the idea of a snowball. It's like a snowball rolling and gathering more and more income. And more of your income is now going toward the next item in your debt snowball. So that momentum will change your behavior on how you pay things. That's where your mindset will change. Once you realize during baby step 2 that this stuff is actually working, that's when your behavior is going to start changing. And at that point, you're going to find yourself redoing what I told you in step 0, all the things I told you should be doing prior to starting. You're probably going to go back and redo those things and say, oh, I need to cut more, I need to do this. And you're going to realize that you can get out of debt because your mindset changed. Math didn't have anything to do with it. So that's why this way works, because it changes the behavior on how you handle your money. Now, once you've done that, it says here you can take your first vacation if you can pay cash for it. So what that references is, in a normal scenario, you say, oh, I'll just charge the vacation and we'll pay it off when we get back. Well, I told you prior to starting baby step 1, no more credit. You can't charge it. You can't create new debt while you're trying to pay off old debt. Doesn't work that way. If that's the way it worked and that's the way you've been doing it, and it's not been working, well, now you know why it's not been working. It doesn't work that way. So during baby step 2, no one said you can't go on vacation. So you put it into the budget. You figure out how far out you're going to go. We're going to go to whatever state in the next 6 months. You start setting aside a little bit of money, cash, setting aside. And that cash could be in your bank, but you're going to set aside a little bit, and once you have enough to go, you go. No credit cards. But the whole time you're doing that, you're paying off on the debt snowball. So the debt snowball is still rolling. And now when you go to vacation for the first time ever, and you pay cash for everything, and it's in your budget, and you had permission from your own self in the budget to go on vacation, you're going to have a better time. It's going to help with that behavior that I referenced, because you're going to feel like a lot more relaxed that you did not go further in debt just to go on this vacation. I'm telling you, as you start working on baby step 2, and you come to the realization that this stuff works, that's when everything will click, and that's when life will get so much better for you. Now, that may take first 3, 4, 5 months. It's not going to be easy. Baby step 2 sounds like, oh, it's just starting and it's going to be real easy. Nope. Baby step 2 could take 18 to 24 months. That's all dependent on you and how much debt you have. But the average is about 18 months. But the first 3 to 4 months are the most difficult, especially if you've never done a budget before. It's going to take you 3, 4 months just to get your budget right. You're like, oh, Brian, I know how much I spend. It's no big deal. All right. Do a budget. Look at it. Try to figure out what you've spent. Then do a budget and compare it. You're going to realize how much you've overspent on things, and it's going to make you just go crazy. So anyway, first 3 to 4 months of you doing a budget is going to be very difficult. Not impossible, just difficult. and most people, it takes 3 to 4 months before they get a rhythm going with their budget. And after that, doing the budget's a lot easier. And then, of course, tracking it and staying on the budget's a lot easier at that point. All right, so baby step 3 is where, now, at this point, we've paid off the last debt, except your mortgage now. You still have a mortgage out there, so you still have debt out there, but it's non-mortgage debt. So baby step 2, we've just paid off the last credit card, student loan, whatever it may be. So I just mentioned student loans. And some people say, well, Brian, student loans are like mortgages, so why don't I just wait till after baby step 3 and we'll do, pay off the student loans later. Nope, it's a debt. I don't care if you ain't going to pay for it right now. I don't even care if the government might pay it back. The reality of it is you borrowed the money. You said you would pay it back. You have to pay it back. Now, later on, if as you're paying it back, they relieve all that debt, that's okay too. But right now, you're in this plan, and you need to start doing it in order. So if you've got, say, 7 student loans and they equal $100,000, you don't list it as one debt as $100,000. You list all 7 of those debts separately in the correct order based on the lowest to highest, like I talked about earlier. And if you don't, I mean, if you don't quite get how that works, feel free to reach out to me on the Discord channel and or chat in here, and I'll walk through it with you. But the reality of it is you have to list all of your debts, lowest to highest in baby step 2, and then you start paying the bare minimum on every single one, and you apply every extra dollar from your budget toward the lowest item on that list until you are at the highest one. At that point, you're paying off your last debt. And once that last debt is paid off, all you have left at that point is your mortgage. Well, the great news at that point is you can honestly say you're debt-free. A lot of people will say that they're debt-free at that point. Some people even scream it. So it's something to celebrate. So there's nothing wrong with celebrating at that point. Now, you're still paying on your mortgage. You've been paying the minimum that you pay on it. And once you get in baby steps 4, 5, and 6, and we'll talk about that in the next session, that's when you're going to start paying down that mortgage very, very, very quickly. But let's talk about baby step 3 now. You've just paid off that last debt. You guys went out to a celebration dinner, and you celebrated a little bit and paid cash for the dinner. And you are completely debt-free. You don't have any credit cards. And the only bills you have debt-wise is just your mortgage. And you're current on that because you've been paying on it. You start into baby step 3. Now, remember, you already have $1,000 in the bank. You haven't touched that unless there was an emergency. Now, if you did touch that, you have to pause baby step 2 until you get that $1,000 back in the bank, and then you resume on baby step 2. I didn't say that earlier, but let's just make sure that that's clear. If you actually have an emergency while you're in this plan, you go back to that baby step to replenish what's supposed to be there. All right, so baby step 3, the idea here is to change that $1,000 starter emergency fund to a fully funded emergency fund. And a fully funded emergency fund is based on you and your household. So they say somewhere between 3 and 6 months worth of expenses into your emergency fund. And you notice it says to get a fully funded emergency fund. So the idea here is that if you became unemployed today, within the next 3 to 6 months, you should find a job that's equal to or about where you're at now to replace your income, but you need something to cover those 4 walls while you are in job hunting and or replacing that income. Now understand at this point, you don't have any of your current debt. So you don't include that in your 3 to 6 months. It's just your 4 walls and stuff to live. So you got to determine what that number is. So when you start, you can actually figure out during baby steps 1 and 2, figure out what your baby step 3 number is. You add up all of your monthly requirements and multiply it by 3, and then multiply it by 6, or multiply by 3 and then 4 and then 5 and then 6, and look at those numbers and say, what do we feel comfortable at? What amount is okay for that? And that becomes your fully funded emergency fund. Most folks recommend that you put that in some type of fund other than just a regular bank account. But honestly, you put it anywhere you want. Totally up to you. You want to get an actual financial advisor that's going to sell you something, sell you a place to put it, whether it be a money market or something like that. That's totally up to you where you put it. The idea is for you to have it. What you don't want to do is use that for investments, because you want to be able to have access to it fairly quickly. So for me personally, I have my fully funded emergency fund in a money market account that doesn't collect a whole lot of, or it doesn't earn a whole lot of interest, earns a little bit more than a savings account, but I can write a check out of it if I had to get to it a lot quicker. So if my furnace in the house goes out, I don't pull out my credit card. I pull out my checkbook. It's debit card, but it's the same thing. So anyway, 3 to 6 months of your expenses, You have to calculate what that is. Different for every family, different for every household. So you take that fully funded emergency amount, and before, whatever you had in the debt snowball is now going toward that. Now understand, while you're in baby step 3, you need to start looking at, okay, well, I've been driving around, I got rid of my super expensive car, and I've been driving around this, this 10-year-old car just to be able to get by. I've got to look at, I need to start replacing that car. So I need to start looking at that and adding that into my budget. Okay, so when do I want to replace it? Calculate that out. You already know how much you're going to need, and a good idea of how much money you're going to need to replace the car. So you just divide that out by the number of months you're waiting before you need to replace it, and then you put that in the savings account as well, and they call those sinking funds. So any non-monthly expense that you know's coming up, that could be insurance, because you want to pay your insurance plans annually. That could be a car replacement. It definitely is Christmas presents. December doesn't roll around and we all of a sudden say, oh, where'd Christmas come from? You knew 12 months in advance that you were going to buy some Christmas presents, if that's what you celebrate. So you create a sinking fund, and you put away a little bit of money each month. So that way when October, November comes around and you're actually purchasing those presents, you're not diving into your monthly budget. You're pulling it out of the savings account where you've already put the money. That's called a sinking fund. All right? So this is also where if you don't own a home, you can start saving in a sinking fund the 20% down that you would need to get a mortgage. There's nothing wrong with having a mortgage. We said no credit, but you got to have a home. So this is where you would do that. You want to have that 3 to 6 months first. So let's just call this like baby step 3, 3A, and 3B type thing. So you want to save up the fully funded emergency fund and then start adding to your sinking funds that you know you're going to need. Furniture replacement's another one. Everyone knows, every 10 years you got to buy a bed, all those types of things. You can start calculating that out and say, okay, new bed's going to cost me $1,000 or whatever it is, so I'm going to buy that in 10 months, so I got to start putting away $100 a month until I have that $1,000 to be able to buy it. Okay, nothing wrong with that. You can, at this point, you can move up and buy a better car. Remember I told you you're getting rid of that one car, any car that you couldn't pay off within 24 months. I don't need to be driving around a vehicle that has $500 or $600 car payment when I've got all this debt during baby step 1 and 2. But I'm in baby step 3 now. I've paid off all my debt. There's nothing wrong with me saving up. Now I'm not talking about going to the car lot and buying a car and they say, oh well, you get 6 months, 6 months, you got 2% interest, or that's credit. Nope. You save up for the down, save up for the car that you need to buy, and when you have enough, you buy it. You'll have the money because you won't have the other debt that you currently have. I'm telling you, once you realize what's going to happen during baby step 2, once you realize that, you're going to come to that realization that this plan can work. But you just got to get to it's about the middle of baby step 2. All right. Now, I talked about baby steps 1, 2, and 3, but prior to baby step 1 again, the first thing you got to do is say, yep, this works. I'm going to commit to it. You might have doubts at first, but you have to commit to doing the plan. You can't do part of the plan and, okay, I heard what Brian said. I've listened to Dave Ramsey, and I agree with some of his stuff, but I'm not going to do it all. And so you can do that, but most likely the same thing's going to happen that's been happening until now. So if you're currently living paycheck to paycheck, if you currently have ungodly amounts of student loan debt or debt in general, the likelihood of you being able to follow part of this plan and get out of debt exponentially drops to almost nothing. Now, I know for a fact that if you follow this plan exactly, then you will succeed. I thought that I was going to retire. I thought I was going to retire with little to no money in the bank. That is far from the truth now, because I started this plan and worked this plan quite a few years ago. After I worked the plan, I then went back to Dave Ramsey's company and got trained to be a master financial coach. And now I help other folks, just like yourselves, get out of debt. Lots of people out there try to charge money to do this. I usually don't. I want to see people living a lifestyle that allows them to do what they want, when they want, in a debt-free environment. The only way to do that is to follow these steps. My name is Brian Sellers. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to sign up on my Discord channel. I've added that to the chat. If you like what you see and you want to help continue this going, feel free to check out my Patreon page. I've got different levels of support that you can do, anywhere from $1 to $50, whatever you want to do. I mean, anything, even just you watching this stream is enough for me. But I've got different things out there for you to check out. Additionally, my website is up there on the screen. That's www.helpmydollar.com. I do free consultations all the time. I also allow folks to reach out to me on my Discord channel. So again, reach out to me on Discord, and we can definitely make contact. I can help out anybody that's willing to want to get out of the debt. Everyone have a great day.